I forgot about that button. Okay, JV, tell me if you can hear me now. I swear, every single time it's something, y'all. Thank you. Thank you so much. I don't know what I would do without the people in the chat letting me know what's going on. Appreciate you. Um, okay, so anyway, where was I? I haven't been able to talk about the Micah Parsons trade because I haven't been live. It was Wednesday was the last time that I went live. And next thing you know, everything hit the fan on Thursday. Just I like literally when I saw the news, I had to double check like 3 times because I was like, this has to be like a spam account or something. I did not believe that that they were actually gonna trade him. I was just as surprised as Micah Parsons, except Micah Parsons was the person who asked for the trade. That was kind of the weird part. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the trade itself because I feel like everything that needs to be said has already been said. And my basic outlook is this. My perspective is this. One, there are a lot of people who are comparing the Micah Parsons trade to the Luka Doncic trade. And the reason why I don't agree with that is for one main reason, which is that Luka actually led the Mavs to the finals. Like he was actually an integral piece in the success of the Dallas Mavericks. Micah Parsons, while he is an outstanding player and a generational talent, he did not do all that for the Cowboys. As a matter of fact, there are a lot of Cowboys fans who criticize Micah Parsons for kind of disappearing in the playoffs. And I never really criticized him too harshly for that because I understand that it's a team sport, things happen, so on and so forth. But I just feel like for that reason alone, you can't really compare the two losses. Also, there's a fact that regardless of whether Jerry Jones was motivated by pettiness or not, the fact of the matter is what he said about the run game, he was kind of right. Um, Micah Parsons was not going to fix the run game. I don't even think that was his skill set. You know what I'm saying? So if they really did want to focus on fixing the run game, now granted, it would have been better had they before, let's say, the draft, because Dallas Cowboys fans have been begging for DT help, begging for improvement in the run game literally as far as I can remember. Like ever since I've been a fan, Dallas Cowboys fans have been asking for that. So it would have been nice had they been able to plan that. It kind of feels like flying by the seat of your pants was the theme of this offseason. You know, they kind of botched the whole head coach search with how they handled the contract discussions with McCarthy and ended up kind of getting Schottenheimer last minute. And that's a situation that looks like it could work out, but it could have been better had they planned a little bit better, right? And I feel like that whole sentiment is echoed here, where they botched the contract talks with Micah Parsons, and it could have worked out had they planned better. But what they end up with is Kenny Clark, who, when he's not injured, has shown to be a very formidable athlete. But had they planned a little bit better, they probably could have made this work out a whole lot better. Because do they need help in the run game? Yes. Would it have been awesome if they'd been able to get that help and keep Micah Parsons? That would have been an even better situation. So this is just kind of feels like what they're settling for in this situation. JV, what about Christian Wilkins? What are you asking? Be more specific, por favor. Um, and good to see you in the chat too, Royal 007. So, on that note, I do want to bring up the video that I have from Micah Parsons' agent and talk a little bit about what he said. So, Micah Parsons' agent, David Mulugheta, went on First Take today, and he talked publicly about the trade and about the trade talks, and he talked about some of the questions that I think a lot of fans had when it comes to this trade and what exactly happened, where talks broke down, so on and so forth. So I'm going to go ahead and pull that up for us, and we'll get into it.
Now, as far as the contract, for us, this kind of moved at a normal pace initially. We were open to doing a deal, as we stated, with the Cowboys after his third season. And at the time, the Cowboys had other deals to do. You know, that Dak Prescott was coming up, their quarterback, their leader, as well as CD. So we knew that we would have to wait our turn. So after his third season, after his fourth season, we asked again if they were ready to start negotiating a deal. And at that time, they told us they would let us know when they were. And for some reason, that never happened with me.
So that's probably the first part of the story that deviates from what Jerry Jones said, because Jerry Jones made it sound like Micah Parsons was the one who initiated talks, and that at some point David Mulugheta stopped the talks. Based on what David Mulugheta is saying here, it sounds like um, they they both tried to initiate the talks together. Micah Parsons and David Mulugheta tried to initiate this together, and the Joneses were the ones who said kind of pump the brakes on the whole
David, thank you for
situation.
being on the show, which, by the way, props to you because, Lord, you're hard to get. I had to ask you for months for crying out loud. It took me months to get you on the show because this is not something that obviously you're prone to do. So I really, really appreciate you coming on the show. Jerry says that essentially when he made a contract offer, he brought up some "stick it up your ass" comment that came out of your mouth, the mouth of the representation for Micah Parsons. I want you to address that and whether or not there's any truth to what he articulated to myself, to Michael Irvin, and others in regards to that.
Yeah, it might be hard for some to believe, but I don't think I've ever used that phrase in my life. And in my 40 plus years, I definitely wouldn't use it with somebody that I have to work with or somebody that I plan on working with in the future. So no, that wasn't true. And it was a misrepresentation of what I said. What I did tell them was if they believed that the contract was already finalized and they were sending it over to me to be rubber stamped, then, they probably shouldn't send it over.
David, what?
Okay, so I'm gonna pause right there because that's one of those things where, like, it's like while I believe that David Mulugheta didn't say that Jerry Jones should take the contract and stick it up his ass, like I buy that, right? But what I don't buy is that he said something as mild as, "Oh, if you think I'm gonna rubber stamp it, then you probably shouldn't send it over." This is one of those situations where I believe the truth is somewhere in the middle. I think he said something probably a little more harsh than that, just for the simple fact that most agents, most people who work in the sports industry, it's well known. You'll hear people commonly say that you got to have thick skin to handle those negotiations. You got to have thick skin to do business in the sports industry. So just the idea that he said, "Oh, you probably shouldn't send it over," I'm not really buying that. So I don't know what the truth was. That's one of those things that we may never find out the truth. We may never hear the full story of what was said. But for some reason, I'm just not buying
What
that
are we
that was it.
missing here? Jerry Jones is of the mindset that there was a negotiation that took place between him and Micah Parsons, and then he gets a call from Micah Parsons, and Micah Parsons ultimately calls him back and says, "Don't call me anymore. Call my agent." After an agreement was reached, you guys appear to be diametrically opposed in terms of your interpretation of what transpired. Break down for the audience exactly what transpired. What was Micah Parsons talking to Jerry Jones about? What actually happened that had Jerry Jones get to a point where he believed the negotiation was completed before somebody like yourself got in the way, per se?
Definitely, as far as Mike is concerned, he was out of the country. He got a call from Jerry's assistant and was asked to come in to meet about leadership. So when he got back from his vacation, he came in and he gave them a call, told him he was back, he was ready to meet. At some point during that meeting, that was represented to him was going to be about leadership. It turned into contract talk. And if you're a 25-year-old football player and your boss, who happens to be the most powerful person in the NFL, starts talking about contracts, it's hard for you to end that conversation. So they had a conversation. Micah nodded his head out of respect. Obviously, there's a power dynamic that's a little different there. One guy is the owner of the team and the GM, and the other one is Micah Parsons, a young 25-year-old football player. So I'm not sure if there was a miscommunication there by the time Micah walked out, but at no point did Micah believe that he was negotiating a contract.
This is another point where I'm not sure I'm completely buying what Mulugheta is saying. And here's why. So, first of all, the idea that Micah Parsons simply nodded his head out of respect, that's one of those things that I'm just kind of like, it doesn't really feel like something that Micah Parsons does. You know what I'm saying? Micah is a talker. Micah has talked publicly about his contract and said things like, he didn't need to be the highest paid, whatever. He just wanted to win. Even said that, oh, my agent is going to kill me for saying this. So if he's saying all this publicly, he's saying all this on Twitter, why would he all of a sudden get in a meeting with Jerry Jones and all of a sudden he's quiet, just nodding his head? But I don't want us to just simply coast past the statement about Jerry Jones being the most powerful man in the NFL, because that's one of those things that, whether or not it came into play in this situation, it is going to come into play play in future situations. And just the number of people that you hear making statements like that, I believe is significant. Even if it doesn't come into play here, I think it's going to come into play with some of the future developments of the NFL. But for right now, we're going to focus on this situation.
So with that being said, what was the issue, or what has been the issue, or has there ever been an issue between you and Jerry Jones where it would seem very, very simple? You're one of the most influential agents in the world, clearly the most powerful in the NFL in the eyes of many. It makes no sense to a lot of us why Jerry Jones would refrain from wanting to talk to you to a point where he's almost willing to lose, or actually literally willing to lose, Micah Parsons, rather than sit down and have a negotiation with you. What is that about?
I think that was the part for us that was the most confusing, right? I understand Jerry's always going to do what's best for the Cowboys, and we get that, right? His job is to do what's best for the team and put them in the best situation to win. In this situation, once Micah asked for his representation to be involved, we assumed that that would go like any other negotiation, and they would reach out, or they would allow me to reach out and commence negotiations. But I can't answer that question. I'm not sure how this turned the way it did. We were open to negotiate. We reached out numerous times to Adam Periska there, who does their contracts. I've reached out to Stephen Jones as well and asked him, to start negotiations. But for some reason, coming out of that conversation, Jerry believed that he had reached an agreement and he was not open to negotiating any further.
What does that say to you about where?
All right, so I'm going to skip ahead a little bit at this point because right now they're pretty much laying the groundwork for what we've seen. And actually, let me bring this off the screen for a second and talk to you guys because all right, so one of the things about this situation that I think is kind of taken for granted is the fact that there are two things that can be true, right? So I feel like when it comes to Cowboys fans, there's, for the people who actually are still, talking about this, because I've seen some people say that they're over it, but there are two things that can be true. On one side, you've got the statements from Jerry Jones about the need to improve the run game. And he said that when it comes to the team leadership and the coaches who were in charge of this decision or who had input on this decision, everybody was unanimous that this was something that needed to happen. And it's like, okay, well, when did it become a unanimous decision, right? But then on the other side, you've got people saying like, well, Micah said that he wanted to be a Cowboy for life, but then he requested to be traded. And so they feel like it's kind of a reflection of Jerry Jones's pettiness that he was like, okay, you want to be traded? I'm going to go ahead and trade you, especially with the news coming out from Micah Parsons himself that after the trade happened, he didn't hear from Jerry Jones, which is kind of weird if you know anything about the dynamics of their relationship, especially as it was presented. Jerry Jones said himself that very few people have his phone number, and Micah Parsons was one of those people. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like overall, my perspective on this is that two things can be true. Sometimes the truth is just like a convenient supporting statement for how you actually feel. Like human beings will rationalize the hell out of anything. So is it true that the Cowboys did need to do something about, their run defense, that they did need to make some improvements in that area? Yes, absolutely. Is it probably also true that Jerry Jones felt a little bit betrayed and took this as an opportunity to be petty and kind of see if he could make Micah Parsons regret requesting a trade and doing it so publicly? Yeah, that's also a strong possibility, right? And then here's the thing about Jerry Jones. Like, it's one thing to say, like, okay, Jerry Jones would love to still have one of the best players in the league on the Dallas Cowboys. He would love to win these trade negotiations. I think the one thing that he would love more than that is to have a successful season without Micah Parsons and be able to rub it in people's faces and be like, ha, see, you wanted a trade, you wanted this, you wanted that, and you got it, and now you're no longer on a winning team. Now, that said, that brings us to what we're going to discuss for the rest of the show, which is what exactly to look forward to when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys. Because as interesting as this has been, at the end of the day, there's a game on Thursday, right? And I feel like that's part of the reason why so many people are over this. I feel like had all this broken in like July, people might be much more willing to spend a lot more time talking about it. But with it being that we are already in week one and that the game against the Philadelphia Eagles is coming up, I feel like that's what's got a lot of people kind of like, okay, let's move on. Mike is gone. We have a game coming up. Let's talk about what we can expect from our team. There was one more clip that I wanted to play for you guys from this. and then we'll get into talking about the game that's coming up for week 1. So we're going to fast forward to the end here. Only because like it's a good section of the show this morning that happened. Stephen A was really asking a lot of the questions that Cowboys fans have, but we're gonna go ahead and skip through a little bit.
Part of the contract was a 4-year deal versus a 5-year deal, right? When you look at that fifth new year could be the difference in $30 to $40 million for the player. You know, if you look at where the pass rusher market was a year ago, it was at 35 million or so with Nick Bosa. Now it's at 47 million in 1 year with Micah Parsons. So 4 years from now, what do you think that number is? It's probably closer to 65, $70 million a year. And if we lock in that fifth year currently at $40 million, just that year alone is worth an additional $30 million to Micah, if not more. And that's not even counting the raise that he got for the next 4 years, or the fact that the Packers were good enough to us that they gave us the fifth-year option as a linebacker this year as opposed to a DN. So that's an additional $3 million. So, the difference between those two deals you're looking at could be possibly, $60, $70 million when it's all said and done.
So that's David Mulugheta talking about basically what the differences were between the two deals that were presented by the Cowboys and by the Packers, even though Jerry Jones said that he was going to make Micah Parsons the highest paid non-quarterback player in the NFL. And David Mulugheta is saying, well, first of all, the Green Bay Packers are giving us a fifth-year option this year as a linebacker and not as a defensive end. And so that was one of the things a lot of people are asking about the Cowboys. Like when it came out that Micah had filed a grievance over that, it was like, okay, well, who was in charge of that? Because people were making it seem like that was an NFL decision. If David Mulugheta is correct, then that was actually something the Cowboys could have changed and chose not to, but the Packers did. And then he talks about the length of the contract and how that can make a huge, huge difference in when a player is able to negotiate and how much money they're able to get. So if money is the most important thing for Micah Parsons, unlike what he said on Twitter, then hey, he's definitely in the right hands. So let's go ahead and close this. And I want to see if y'all are asking any questions in the chat. If y'all do have any questions about the game against the Eagles or about this, since I didn't get a chance to talk about it over the weekend, you can go ahead and put it in the chat because I don't have a specific direction for how I'm going to take the talk about the Cowboys versus the Eagles. There are a lot of things I feel like we could talk about. Number one being that situation where Brian Schottenheimer said all offseason that everything that happened with the team was going to come from the trenches, which sounds great in theory, but it feels like the closer that we get to this game, the more questions people are asking about the run game, the more questions people are asking about the Cowboys secondary, the more questions people are asking about what to truly expect when it comes to Dak and his connection to his receivers as he faces a Vic Fangio defense, right? So is it still going to come down to the trenches? Of course. That's just football. Like, whether people find it interesting or not, at the end of the day, everything starts with what happens at that line of scrimmage, right? But it just feels like when it comes to questions, people have a lot more questions about what's happening behind the line of scrimmage on either side. JV says, any word on who's the LT on Thursday? Yo, that's a good-ass question. I actually haven't seen anything about that specifically. Let me see if anything's come up today. Because the thing about the Cowboys is they post press conferences every day. And even yesterday, when it came to Matt Eberflus's press conference, I don't think he said specifically. And you know what, JV? Like, Vic Fangio didn't answer a lot of questions. Like, the Eagles and their coaches and coordinators in their press conferences, they weren't answering a lot of questions. So it could be that the Cowboys are following suit and both sides are kind of keeping things a secret to maintain the element of surprise. But no, I haven't heard. I just assumed it would be Guyton. And it looks like a shoddy press conference did drop a few hours ago that I haven't had time to watch because I pretty much go straight from like working to, okay, like let me get dressed and come in here. So I haven't had time to watch it, but I can pull up the transcript. We can kind of scan through it and talk about it in the second half. And let's see, there's a Tyler Booker interview, there's a Brian Schottenheimer interview, and then there's an Iziraku interview. So I'll look through the Brian Schottenheimer interview and see if he answered that question. But no, I haven't heard anything. Great question. But yeah, outside of that, we've got team captains named. I wrote a whole article this morning about how I feel like CD being a team captain and his leadership is going to make a big difference on the offense. And so I feel like that's another thing that is kind of being murmured about underneath the surface. That's a little bit more interesting to people than what's going on in the trenches right now. And here's why I think that is. And this is what I said in my article. In the past, CD Lamb has been discussed as though he was a distraction. Every year it feels like there's a couple of games where they talk about his body language on the sideline and the demeanor that he's bringing, and how that's like just not good vibes for the offense. How he should hold himself and his teammates more accountable. And so I feel like if you think that him being that way is a distraction, then you've got to also believe that him being more mature, him being more of a leader, him showing more accountability, you've got to believe that that's an asset to Dak Prescott. One of the things I said in this article is that every captain needs a lieutenant, and I feel like CD is really stepping into that role. When you have someone who can support the statements of the leader, who can kind of be that second in command, who's falling right in step with what the leader says and kind of echo what the culture is, what the standard is, that makes a big difference. That's one of those intangibles that I think people take for granted, and I feel like it's going to end up being one of the most underrated stories of the season. I feel like CeeDee Lamb's leadership, his maturity, his growth this season specifically is going to be one of those things that people look back on 2025, the 2025 season, and when they think about it in retrospect, because I think this is going to be a great season for the Dallas Cowboys. But I think CeeDee Lamb and his leadership, when people look back on the season in retrospect, they're gonna be like, "Damn, that actually made a big difference." Like, wow, he really stepped up and really helped the defense be all that it could be in this particular season. Um, Aw, thanks, JV. I appreciate that because I am like not wearing any foundation. I be getting so nervous about coming on here with no makeup, and y'all always have like the kindest compliments. I appreciate it. Anyway, let's go to commercial break, and we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk more about the matchups between the Cowboys and the Eagles. Stick with me.
Why have thousands of aspiring authors teamed up with Christian Faith Publishing to publish their book? Because Christian Faith Publishing is an author-friendly publisher who understands that your labor is more than just a book. We provide authors freedom and flexibility throughout the publishing process, professional book editing, award-winning design, and some of the highest royalty structures in the publishing industry. And as always, you will retain 100% of the rights to your book.
I was looking to find a company that I could trust, one that assisted in the editing process completely.
The most important qualities that I was looking for was a publisher who was honest and upfront, no hidden costs or fees, and owning the rights to my own work.
Christian Faith Publishing will publish, market, and sell your books in all major bookstores, online booksellers, as well as specialty Christian bookstores. Call for your free author submission kit.
800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. 800-978-4812. That's 800-978-4812.
Here's important new information from the Diabetes Solution Center for you, a family member, or a loved one suffering with diabetes. If you have lost your provider, or if you need a provider for diabetic supplies, you may qualify to receive your diabetic testing supplies now with little or no out-of-pocket cost, regardless of your age. All you need is Medicare or private insurance to be potentially eligible. Call the Diabetes Solution Center right now for details. Just takes a couple of minutes. Our friendly, knowledgeable agents will give you free, no-obligation information, handle all the insurance paperwork, and make sure your supplies are delivered directly to your door for free.
Call U.S. Medical Supply 24 hours a day. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. 800-597-9323. Call right now. 800-597-9323.
What's up, y'all? And we are back. Okay, so I'm gonna answer a couple of questions before we get back into the conversation about the Cowboys and the Eagles. What's good, Marcus McFarland? Glad to see you in the chat. Make sure you hit that like button before you leave. So, one, I pinned a comment in the chat. If you see it, it's got two links. One is to my Venmo, one is to an app called Buy Me a Coffee. And here's why. And it kind of relates to what I was saying before the break when JV gave me a compliment on my appearance. Thank you. Part of the reason that I just kind of threw on whatever and got over here is because I am catching a flight in the morning. Now, normally, when someone offers me an opportunity to do something that requires time or investment on my part, I'm just like, I'm too busy, too stressed, got too much work to do, too broke, whatever. Shit's been going so crazy the past like year and a half that this one time I was like, you know what? I'm going to go. So tomorrow I'm catching a flight to go to the US Open in New York. I'm only going to be there for a couple of days. But the thing is, everything is not covered. And so while y'all are definitely not obligated to do anything, but if you want to help me make this a good experience and help me be at a point where I don't have to work the entire time I'm there, and help me be in a place where I can get some good coverage for you, some good videos, maybe even go live a couple of times, then that is a very easy way to support me. I accept Venmo. And then the Buy Me a Coffee thing is just like if you want to use a card or something like that, you don't have to subscribe. It's not like a membership. You can just like donate a small amount. And it helps me out a little bit. But yeah, so the good news is I was invited to the US Open. Awesome. I've never been. I'm looking forward to it. If you follow me on Twitter, you know I've been talking about the US Open and the matches all week. The bad news is the ticket that I got is for Thursday night. So while everybody else is watching the Dallas Cowboys in week 1, I'm going to be watching Naomi Osaka and whoever she plays against. Fingers crossed. I'm assuming that she's going to make the semifinals because she's been playing phenomenally. So that's what I'll be doing. And when it comes to my thoughts on the Dallas Cowboys, I'll just catch up with y'all either late. Which brings me to tomorrow night. Normally I go live late on Wednesday nights. Chances are I won't. I don't know where I'll be. If I end up like in my hotel just chilling, I'll go live and we can do what we normally do on Wednesday nights. But it's possible that I'll be out exploring or doing something fun. So I might not get with y'all tomorrow night. So just so you know. What was the other question that I was going to answer? Oh, yes. JV said that he hated the slander about CD. So here's the thing. Let's talk about that for a second because I feel like y'all have been X'd and O'd to death, right? And there are some phenomenal content creators out there talking about the X's and O's of this matchup coming up for week 1. As a matter of fact, I was listening to Skywalker Still this morning. I don't get to watch him much live anymore, but I usually catch most of the replays. And he had this defensive guru on there who just really knew his stuff when it came to the coverages that he expected Vic Fangio to use and what the Cowboys might do against him. It was a great show. And the part that discusses that isn't that long. So like definitely catch the replay so you can at least get that info. But I'm going to talk to y'all about the intangibles just real quick. If you have questions about other stuff, put it in the chat. I'll get to you. But I'm going to talk to y'all about the intangibles. Because when I saw that Brian Schottenheimer was changing the way that he did the team captains, like, one, I was so glad that he did that because I feel like continuity and leadership is so important. For all the talk that Mike McCarthy did about the kind of culture that he was trying to build, some of the things that he did just didn't really necessarily support a championship culture, especially when you wanted there to be consistency in that culture. Because Brian Schottenheimer is still going to have the rotating captain, so there's going to be a new captain added to the list of captains every week. But he also had the team vote on what was supposed to initially be 4 team captains, but because of the way the voting came in, it ended up being 6 total. And a couple of my favorite players are on that list. So the captains are Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb, Oso Odigizua, Donovan Wilson, and then Brandon Aubrey and CJ Goodwin, right? And so if you know me, you know my favorites on that list are CeeDee Lamb and Oso Odigizua. Now, when it comes to Osa is one of those people who from the first time I met him, I knew he had just leadership skills because there's just something about when you meet a person, and I don't know if it's because I've been put in a leadership position so often or because I've had to work in some capacity with so many leaders that whenever I encounter a person who has it, I just see it. But like even before I ever got the opportunity to watch him at practice, I was like, I can just tell this guy has like high standards in terms of his work ethic, in terms of what he brings to the table as an athlete. I could just tell. And then we started talking, and I was just like, "Oh yeah, he's absolutely a leader." And then like when I was in the building and I would go to practices, there were only so many places that media was allowed to go. But when they would practice indoors, there was a section where I could kind of move away from the rest of the media and sit closer to where the D line was so that I could hear and also see a little bit better. And yeah, you could see one, Osa Odigizua does not take reps off. And two, he's very encouraging to his other teammates, encouraging to step their games up and improve and work on the little things, the smaller details, their technique, so on and so forth, right? So when Osa was named captain, didn't even question it. And I think even in the last episode, I talked to you guys about the fact that I saw him talking extensively with Matt Eberflus, and that he had like the wristband on that looked kind of like a quarterback's wristband, but obviously he plays defense. So I don't know what's on it, but he had one. So it was kind of obvious that he was taking on this like leadership role with the defense, right? CeeDee Lamb was the one that surprised a lot of people. And you could tell because in Brian Schottenheimer's press conference, when he announced who the captains were, they didn't question the other 5 people. Brian Schottenheimer got questioned about CeeDee Lamb specifically and had to literally say, like, yo, like Schottenheimer had to literally be like, that was not a surprise to us in the building. Like, maybe it was a surprise to y'all, but not to us. And I'll say it wasn't a surprise to me. And this morning, I was actually going through my Twitter account because I was looking for something that I had said like months ago about CeeDee Lamb and about his leadership. And I realized I had actually written an article back in January about CeeDee Lamb growing as a player, maturing as a player, stepping into that leadership role, showing more accountability, and how that was going to impact this season. So back in January, I was already saying this. So fast forward to this week, he's announced as a team captain. And it's just like, I couldn't be happier for him. I feel like the players made a great decision. There are some people who seem to disagree. There are some people who are still holding on to what they remember of CeeDee Lamb from a couple of different games where he was particularly frustrated. But CeeDee is one of those people who, a lot like Osa, the first time I talked to him, I could see it, you know? And I don't really know how to explain it. It's a very intangible thing. But it was just something about, although he did kind of he was known kind of for catching the attitude, not having the best body language, not having the best demeanor, but in those personal conversations when he would talk about what he wanted from the other receivers, the way that he was looking forward to the younger receivers walking through the door, the way that he wanted the whole unit to shine. He wasn't one of those selfish receivers that's like, give me the ball, it's my ball. Like when he would talk about what he hoped for Flamingo, like he would light up talking about it, you know? And just the way that he was like very no nonsense. Like he didn't really like the drama, even though he got pulled into it a lot of times. He was pulled into a lot of headlines, but he didn't really like discussing the drama. And so it's just like little things like that. And the way that he talked, what he decided to focus on, what he would answer, what he wouldn't answer, the way he would kind of stand on business when he decided that he didn't want to answer something because it would just lead to mess and drama. You could kind of tell. And then he did that podcast with Micah Parsons where he said out loud that he wanted to be a leader. He wanted to show more accountability. He wanted to improve the culture of the team. And it took him a while, right? It's not something that happened overnight. But I feel like him just even saying that out loud was kind of a big deal when it comes to him making it clear that that's something that he's working on. So one thing about CeeDee Lamb is every year he works on something. So his rookie season, he got criticized for drop passes. Comes back his second year, all of a sudden it's not an issue. He minimizes drop passes by like 80% less than the year before. During his second year, he was criticized for his route running. So in that offseason, he made his route running sharper. His third season, that was when everybody's like, we don't know if he can actually be a wide receiver 1. Like, people don't talk about that anymore. But his third season, people were questioning if he could be a wide receiver 1. I remember Michael Irvin going on First Take and wanting to kick him out of the 88 club. It was the most disrespectful shit I've ever seen. But that's how they were talking about him. And he was like, all right, I got something for y'all. And he worked at his craft, and he became not only a formidable wide receiver 1, but he was lining up out wide. He was lining up in the slot. He was lining up in the backfield. He was run blocking. Dude was doing everything. And he was like, not only am I going to be a wide receiver one, I'm going to be even more than that. And so by the time 2024 came around, people really didn't have shit else to say, right? And so the question was like, okay, so what is he going to work on this offseason? And so now we know. He actually took this attempt to become a better leader very seriously. And it's paid off. I think we're going to see the difference in the offense because, like, make no mistake, bringing in somebody like George Pickens on paper, stat-wise, yes, it's kind of obvious why George Pickens is an asset. But the addition of a weapon like George Pickens would not work if CeeDee Lamb couldn't support a certain type of culture, if he couldn't share the ball, if he couldn't bring George Pickens into the fold and make him feel welcome. So these are all the things that really don't make sexy headlines. They're not going to talk about this shit on SportsCenter. They're not going to go on First Take and talk about how mature CeeDee Lamb is. I'm pretty sure I am the only journalist in the entire DFW area who would ever read or write a story about CeeDee Lamb being a more mature player and an asset and a good second in command to Dak Prescott. I'm probably the only person who really gives a fuck. But make no mistake, it is a very significant part of why the offense is going to be running smoothly and clicking on all cylinders. So when y'all see what they look like and y'all see how things are going and y'all see how quickly they improve, because I don't expect them to be perfect in week one, but when y'all see how quickly they improve, just kind of keep that in mind, that it's not just Dak by himself anymore trying to make things happen and be a leader. CeeDee Lamb is backing him up as well. All right. So y'all left a few comments in here. Thank y'all for being active. Appreciate y'all. Don't forget to hit the like button. K. Lou is in the chat. What's up? Said, don't forget Richard Sherman disrespecting him and eating his words. K. Lou, like, if I were to try to list everybody who disrespected him, especially that year, like, we would be here all day. Because if I were to actually take the time and be petty and Google it, we could go name by name and go by what they said and how CeeDee Lamb proved them wrong. But yes, it was Richard Sherman. It was damn near everybody in the media. Like, pretty much anybody who talked about the Dallas Cowboys, anybody who covered the Dallas Cowboys disrespected the fuck out of CeeDee Lamb year 3. You know, and he hears those things. You know he does. But, like, that's one of the things that I like so much about him. It's just like everybody was so focused on his attitude and his demeanor and da-da-da-da. And I'm looking at this kid like, this man is hearing the disrespect. And he's doing exactly what everybody says athletes should do. He's letting his play do the talking. He was Taylor Townsend before Taylor Townsend was like, I'm letting my racket talk. Like, CeeDee Lamb was like, I'm going to just let my cleats do the talking. You know, he did not go in the media and say a bunch of stuff or clap back at these people. He wasn't on social media tweeting at everybody. He was like, I'm going to go and work on my craft. And when he did go to the media and decide that he had something to say, all he said was, you know what? I need to grow up. He literally said that. I need to grow up. That's what he said. He said, I can help Dak with this whole culture and leadership thing. I need to hold myself more accountable. And I just feel like he didn't get enough flowers for that. So hopefully he appreciates me and that, like, y'all are a small audience, but I love you guys. I tell people all the time, I'm just like, when I look at my stats and YouTube is like, yeah, your audience is 97% male. I'm like, I must have the dopest men in the entire sports fandom following me because, like, I don't deal with a lot of bullshit in the chat. Y'all are not like toxic people. Y'all are actually like really quite dope. So I appreciate it. Big Dog said belt to ass Thursday night. Man, I really think that could happen. Okay, so on that note, since Big Dog brought it up, let's talk about what that would look like. Now, if y'all know me, I don't make predictions. I don't do predictions. I don't like making predictions. I don't like making predictions about anything. I don't even really gamble like that, unless it's for fun. If I got some extra money, I might. But belt to ass Thursday night. If that did happen in the Cowboys' favor, what would that look like? So just going off what the coaches have said, here's what we can expect from the defensive side. Matt Eberflus has talked about an attack front defense. He wants his line to be disruptive. He wants him to cause chaos. I don't know if y'all heard the interview by Sam Williams, but JP said, don't entertain Big Dog. JP, I'm going to be honest, I don't even really know who that is. He said B2A, so we're going to talk about it. What's up, Ty Church? But yeah, so where was I? Oh, yeah. So the interview with Sam Williams, I don't know if y'all saw it. It was a very short interview, but here's what I liked about what Sam said. Because Sam in the past has been criticized for lack of discipline. I know last year he was injured, and Cowboys fans have a very short memory. But if you remember before that, he was getting some crazy ass penalties, like to the point where he was canceling out pretty much anything good that he brought to the field. And so to hear him talk about, like, yes, I'm hungry, but I also want to practice restraint, I'm like, okay, so CeeDee Lamb is not the only person bringing a higher level of maturity to the table this season. We've also got Sam Williams talking about being responsible and playing with restraint. But really, that's what we need from the entire defense. Because in order to execute an attack front properly and not get a bunch of penalties, you have to have some sort of restraint. And maybe restraint isn't the best word. You have to be particular. Like, there's the aggressiveness of what you're doing, when it comes to splitting doubles, when it comes to trying to speed up the quarterback's clock. But you can't be so aggressive that you get careless. You have to be aggressive, but like directed in a certain way. But that's why I like guys like Kenny Clark, like Solomon Thomas, like Oso Digizua, because these are not just big, strong, fast guys. They're also very smart players. They're guys who, when you listen to them talk, they know the game, right? So on the defensive side, if the Cowboys are going to win, it's going to require focus. It's going to require coordination. And on that side of the ball, I think one of the unsung heroes that we're going to hear about is Maris Lufau, actually, because that's something else people aren't talking about enough, is him being in his second year and expected to wear, at least last time I checked, being expected to wear the green dot, meaning he's going to be a communicator on the defensive side, right? And then once we get to the secondary on that side, I think one of the things that we are going to need to see in order for the Cowboys to win is we're going to have to see those corners be able to. It depends on if they are in zone or if they're in man. If they're in zone, which is something that we saw a lot during the preseason, then they are going to have to close that space very quickly. So pretty much everybody's going to have to be on their P's and Q's, which can be tough with a defense that's known, or with an offense like the Eagles that's known so much for, kind of disguising things and making it difficult to determine, okay, is this a run play or is this a pass play, right? But once again, that's why I said that green dot position is going to be very important. We have some really smart people on the defense. Like Maris Lufau, smart. Everybody on the D-line, smart. Now, I don't know a lot about the corners. But I'm glad that we have some very smart people, because what that means is that they have the ability to evaluate and adjust. And they also have the ability to remember, so that whatever adjustments they have to make, they're more likely to recognize the patterns, right? So I feel like the biggest question, at least for me, on the defense right now is, what is the secondary going to look like? What can we expect from them in terms of them doing their job? Because when it comes to the attack front and Kenny Clark, Oso Digizua doing what they're supposed to do as far as disruption, I'm not worried about that at all. The only thing I'm kind of worried about, I shouldn't say it all, is when it comes to just of the Eagles O-line. Let's just say I don't expect it to look as easy as it looked at some of those preseason practices that we got to watch publicly. A quick update on that, because I know some people are following it. Jalen Carter and Landon Dickerson were both full participants in practice today. So Jalen Carter especially, I know, was one of the people on the Eagles side of things that people were like, okay, is he going to play? Landon Dickerson, same thing. So if you're one of the people who's been watching that, they were both full participants. So it sounds like they're going to be there. So while I'm not questioning the ability of Osa and the other guys to do their job, I'm also not saying that it's going to be easy. It's going to be difficult. It may even take them a couple of drives to really get going and to really figure it out, right? But I really have a lot of faith in them when it comes to being able to do their jobs. Let's see. Big Dog said, I see I might actually sub to her. Please do. I appreciate that. And then something was deleted. I missed it. All right. So, but moving on. On the offense of the ball, on the offensive side of the ball, so let's say in this world where Cowboys are able to put belt to ass against the Eagles, right? What would we expect to see? for that side of the ball, I want to go back to what Brian Schottenheimer said about his rule of 53/55/60. So for anyone who didn't catch that particular interview, Brian Schottenheimer was asked about an offensive philosophy that he apparently implemented at some point with the Seahawks, and he implemented it enough times to where it was applied to multiple quarterbacks. And what that rule is there's a number that Schottenheimer will apply to the quarterback, and that number at the end of each game should be the sum of completions and run attempts. So not pass attempts and run attempts, but completions and run attempts. But here's why I like this philosophy that combines completions and run attempts into this particular equation. What it allows you to do is, as the game goes on, let me back up, because I haven't applied this to a lot of situations to see how well it works. But Shotty didn't sound like he was necessarily moving away from it. He just wasn't so all in on it that he went into detail on what Dak's number is. But assuming that he's applying it, it allows you, as the game goes on, to see where you are in relationship to reaching that number. So if the pass game is going well and you're getting a lot of completions, you don't have to rely on your run game as much. It's a very quick glance way of seeing, do we need to shift our strategy? Do we need to change how we're approaching what we do against this defense, right? So if Dak is able to get the passes off and he's passes are being completed, CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are doing their thing, then they can keep relying on that. But if something changes and that becomes less effective, then they already know, okay, we need to switch to the run. So instead of being so reactive to that kind of thing, it's an equation that, at least in theory, would allow them to be proactive. Wonderful. Also, Schottenheimer has talked about the fact that he doesn't like a static offense. So if you are one of those Cowboys fans who has been complaining about having a static offense, not enough motion pre-snap, congratulations, Shotty agrees with you. So we're going to see movement. We are going to see proactive decisions when it comes to how to approach the offense. And all this really is going to matter against a Vic Fangio defense, because Vic Fangio, if you don't know anything about coverages, if you don't know what they're called, what they look like, one thing that you probably have heard about Vic Fangio is that he disguises things, right? And so this is one area where the fact that Dak Prescott is very smart, a lot like how a lot of our defensive players are very smart, Dak Prescott is one of the better quarterbacks when it comes to evaluating things post-snap, as long as he remembers to do that. And I'm not saying that he forgets, but I just think sometimes it's very easy to fall into a habit, fall into a routine, and just kind of go with the first thing that you see, which is one of the areas where this being week one might work to our advantage, because he hasn't really had the opportunity to build up any bad habits in terms of making assumption based off what he sees. He should go into this game knowing, I have faced Vic Fangio before. I know how he rolls. I know how he does things. I know I need to be in a position to evaluate quickly post-snap. Same thing with the O-line. They haven't had a whole season to build up bad habits. So that interior, they should already be practicing, possibly having to hold for a few seconds longer so that Dak Prescott has time to evaluate and then step up into the pocket if necessary, right? And we're not talking about seconds on seconds here, but, that split second that it takes a quarterback to be like, oh, wait, what I'm seeing now isn't what I thought was seen before, is what a lot of defensive coordinators like Vic Fangio rely on in order to get the jump on the quarterback, right? So if everybody on the offense is on the same page that, hey, we are going to have to hold this pocket like a tick longer. And if Dak Prescott knows, hey, I'm going to have to keep my eyes peeled as soon as the ball snaps. I don't need to wait and realize that what I'm seeing isn't what I thought I was seeing. I already know. I'm not even going to make assumptions based off what I see pre-snap. I'm waiting to snap the ball and then evaluate, and then we can, run whatever we're going to run, right? So when it comes to passing or running the ball, I don't know which one they're going to lean into, especially if that equation that Schottenheimer applied is going to, or that the equation that Schottenheimer mentioned is going to be applied. But I do know that running the ball is going to be very integral. Now, the question is it going to be one of those where they stick to 20 to 25 carries, or is it going to be one of those games where it's nah, whoever is getting the ball, you are going to have to tote it between the two, or however many people we're looking at, 30 characters or whatever. Let's see, what are y'all talking about in the chat? JV said Jalen Carter couldn't handle him in college. Jalen Carter is a rotation guy as well. Cool. Big Dog said Jalen Carter never came off the field last year. Better do your homework. I wasn't paying enough attention to know if Jalen Carter never came off the field, but I was paying enough attention to know that he was integral. I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like, oh, he's not somebody to worry about. There's a reason why there's so many headlines discussing whether or not he is going to be on the injury report. JV said, do you know how many plays is too many for DTs? Ooh, that's a good question. I actually don't know. Okay, y'all are just debating about Jalen Carter and the number of snaps. Cool. So yeah, that's what I'm predicting on both sides of the ball. So when it comes to the offense, I'm predicting a very balanced offense. I think when it comes to the pass game, I think what we're going to see is going to depend more on not just whether or not the passes are completed, but whether or not CeeDee Lamb and Jalen Carter present enough of a threat to actually force the defense to have to pay attention to other threats on the field, and that will allow Dak Prescott to have more options. Anyway, the timer is ticking down on me. So if we go live tomorrow night, we'll talk a little bit more about this, or maybe I'll go live from the airport to the hotel. But just make sure you're subscribed, turn those notifications on so that y'all know the next time I go live or post any content, and we will pick up this conversation later. This has been another episode of Bitches Love Sports. Thanks for joining. Y'all have a great weekend. I'm out.